So our next session is Swimming with the Sharks. I wonder if that's ironic. A young entrepreneur panel. Now, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce to you your moderator, who's currently a junior studying entrepreneurship community and is an incoming venture fellow for Rough Draft Ventures. His family decided to join him here. He's also CEO of Tile, the world's largest conversation series with hundreds of chapters across the world. And before this young entrepreneur founded Teendemy, an online education platform designed to teach teens life skills that are not taught in college. And it grew to 20 courses with over 2,500 students. So well done to him. A warm welcome to Sumukh Setty. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, Riz, for that wonderful intro. I'm super excited to be representing eTower on one of Babson's biggest stages today. And it's my pleasure to introduce our 4 panelists that we have here today. We'll have about 25 minutes together. And I'm excited to see all the stories and the insights they share with the audience. So our first panelist is David Zamarin, actually an eTower resident as well. He just graduated last spring and actually founded DetraPel, the first non-toxic liquid repellent spray. And actually on Shark Tank, he was given a deal with Mark Cuban and Lori Greiner. So. Our second panelist is Abby Speicher. She founded DARTDrones, a drone training and consulting school. And actually on Shark Tank, she was given a deal with Mark Cuban for $300,000. And our third panelist is Sanjiv Patel. He founded Lord Not Levington's Peanuts. Unfortunately, didn't get a deal on Shark Tank, but I'm sure we'll hear a lot about his experience. And our last panelist is Jamie Siminoff, who founded Ring. Jamie did not get a deal, but he was actually brought on later on to be a guest judge on Shark Tank. So we're super excited. Cool. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I think the first kind of question that I'd love to ask each of you is, can each of you describe the favorite part of your Shark Tank experience? Whoever wants to kick it off.
I guess I'm starting. How's everyone doing today? Good afternoon. I guess for me, the most exciting part for me was probably the before the Shark Tank experience, kind of walking into the stage, because you get I'm not technically supposed to say this, but whatever. You only get 2 minutes to walk in and make sure that your booth or your display is really well done. And that's kind of the first moment where I walked in and I saw the sharks sitting there on their phones and being normal people. And when you watch Shark Tank, especially as a kid, you kind of just visualize these people that are monsters or gods, whatever you want to think of them as. And then you see them kind of on their phone, and it's just this completely weird experience, because you're thinking, wow, in 2 minutes, I'm either going to screw my life over or you're going to be my best friend.
Yeah, my favorite part, I loved seeing behind the scenes, but it was awesome to go back and run my business. It had to be a secret after you know what happened, but you have to wait to find out when your show will air, if it ever will air. A lot of them, they just decide it doesn't make good TV and they don't put it on. So you would get 2 weeks notice, because you check the TV guide and you see that you're in the plan, for you to be on the show. So I was just going crazy. It took 10 months for us from when I filmed for when my episode actually came out. So for 10 months, I was just on everybody, it could be next 2 weeks, let's go. And I was just going crazy. And we grew so much just internally from that, just thinking that we had this big opportunity coming out, and also expecting the money to come any day, that we grew so much quicker in that 10 months than we had any other time during the company. And it was really fun, really exciting. And that was my favorite sort of blip in DARTDrones so far.
So I'd probably go for my most memorable moments. I think, because I share some of the memories of these guys too, but I had my own trailer. I thought that was pretty cool. Right? And I was like, oh, this is how this works. And you have your name on it. It was only on paper, so it wasn't printed. I wasn't there for long. And then you sit there, and then you have a little restroom. It has a pump flush, and you're like, well, this is how they really do it on set, and it's kind of very cool. Just being part of the behind the scenes of the whole LA thing, and being in studios and stuff. And then I think probably for me, the nerves before I walked through the door. I've never got dry mouth ever in my life, you know, even presenting to Lawler, rest in peace, you know, moments like that, and suddenly it was all cotton balls, and reaching to the guy, and he knew this was coming, he gave me water, and I needed it again, and so, I mean, you know, the anticipation is something I'll probably never forget, you know.
So this is, I mean, it's like listening to PTSD.
Yes.
You know? It's like, it's just, each one of these is like a memory where it's like good and also like, oh my God. But I do remember, like, probably the most joyful part of the whole thing is up there and you're doing your pitch, and like I nailed it, so like which just means I didn't screw anything up. And now we're going back with these questions, and you had all of that emotions going into it, and finally, like at one point, it just like I had this, and I hope I didn't sit there too long doing this in my head. In my head, it feels like it was like 3 minutes, but it was probably like less than a second, where I like paused for a second. I looked around, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm on Shark Tank. You know, like I just had this like moment of like, I'm just like, you know, until you're like, you watch it, like I used to watch it not as a kid, sadly, but as an adult. Yeah, I just had that like, wow, like I'm up here. And that was, you know, and I always say Shark Tank is for entrepreneur, it's the equivalent of going to the Olympics for an amateur athlete. So to me, that was like being at the Olympics and saying like, I'm here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Jamie, you mentioned a really interesting moment where that set in and that realization occurred. I'm curious for the other three panelists, when was that moment for you guys and that actually kicked in that, wow, I'm on Shark Tank?
Yeah, I was petrified before going out on stage, and they kept saying, be at 80%, be at 80%, and I was like, I don't know what that means, so I was just chugging coffee. I was like, I'm at 80%, like I was shaking. And then they ended up pushing me to the next day, because I have no idea what it would have been like if I was on that day, because I was like, but yeah, I mean, for me, it was, I think right after I got the deal, I was like, I could not believe that just happened. I seriously still couldn't believe it, but it was just like, that was probably my only bucket list item. And then I was like, now what do I do with my life?
Yeah, for me, I kind of felt the same way. I was in anticipation, although I didn't have it for 10 months. I think I would have killed myself if I had it for 10 months. But, you know, when we finally got the notice that we were going to air, they still tell you that there's a chance even the night before that you won't air. So they're pretty strict about that. And so when we finally found out, the only time that I kind of figured that it was real was like when I was actually watching it on TV.
Yeah, for me, it probably didn't all set in until it finished for me, because I think it was so much adrenaline going into that you're just instinctively dealing with it. You're not reflecting. For me, I didn't have the time for that. And then coming out of it and it's over, I'm like, I think that took 2 minutes. I don't know how long that was, but then it just sank in, and then you can't tell anyone. So
Yeah.
just sit there and just sit on the plane. I'm like, I want to talk to all of you. I can't tell you anything.
And you hear a lot about like, did it air? And
Yeah.
you got to understand, like every gate, there's so many gates at Shark Tank. So you apply and they call you up and they're like, we want you to be on Shark Tank. You're like, sweet, my company's gonna be on Shark Tank. They're like, no. Actually, we then have to go to Sony and get them to approve. You're like, sweet, Sony approved. And then it's like, no, actually, and then you get there and you're like, we're gonna film for the day. You're like, I'm going to be on Shark Tank. They're like, actually, like basically 50% of people that film actually get on the air. So when you're even going out there to pitch, like it's not even guaranteed you get that whole thing that you're going to be on. And then they have this thing that's actually happened where they've had episodes that are supposed to go on and something comes on, like an emergency, broadcast kind of thing. It knocks Shark Tank off the air.
Wow.
And they'll never air the episode. Yeah. And so it's like this, like these gates, you're just like, so you're kind of on this like weird rush/spear. For, I don't know, like for 10 months. I think ours was like 4 or 5 months, but.
Yeah.
My worst feeling with that was that actually sitting in that trailer, just looking at everyone go out, and you're on a timetable, and there's no set timing of how long each set's going to take, right? So the further down you are in the batting order, you may not actually go in, because they might run out of studio time. So you're thinking, man, I've come all this way. I've spent 5 days in a room doing nothing but staring at this thing, and I might just go home with no one to tell about it. So it's, I remember that stuff. I don't know, you guys maybe were very early, but I was pretty.
That happened to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I got pushed the next day, but I was on a coffee high, so
I waited
it's better.
4 hours for the woman before me to finish pitching. It was brutal.
But it is like I have never been as nervous as I have been as I was for that ever.
And you watch people come back, they pitch before you, and some of them look like they literally just got like stabbed and they look disgusting, and other people look like they couldn't have never been happier, and you're just like, what's gonna happen to me in there? Just waiting for your doom.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit here, so I had the chance to actually talk to each panelist before actually we organized this session. And one thing that I found that each of them kind of told me was they all felt that entrepreneurship was a much longer journey than they initially expected. It took many more months, many more years, whatever. So I'm curious, how did each of you kind of like, what kept you guys going through those down points? It might be inspiration to some of the entrepreneurs who are struggling out in the room right now, or some of the fellow eTower students that we have here today.
For me, it was connecting with other people that were going through what I was going through. So for me, being a student and resident at eTower was really helpful. Beyond that, some of probably my former suite mates remember that my first year at Babson, I think it was like first semester, I was going through like a weird wave where we were on a bunch of highs and a bunch of lows. And then I watched this guy, Gary Vee, who's he's a speaker, he's a prominent speaker, but he does other things as well. And I watched him at this conference here in Boston, and that kind of changed everything. That night I pulled like my first all-nighter at school, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna redo my business plan, redo this, and then 2 weeks later I threw it all in the garbage anyway. But that's kind of what happens as an entrepreneur. You always have to iterate, and for us to find inspiration, it's very hard, and that's why it's so kind of crucial to have other entrepreneurs as friends or people that you can relate to.
Yeah, I've been working on DARTDrones for 5 years, and if you told me that when we started, I would never have believed you, because I would think like, oh, 2 or 3 years, but I easily can see that I need to do another like 4 or 5 years with DARTDrones. So for me, it's been about trying to make it that you could survive like long term, and not like, I really was working like crazy hours at the beginning. It was exhausting. I was totally burnt out. And like, I've tried to make it work for my lifestyle now. So like, I started bringing my dog to work, and that made me happier, feel less bad for her. My husband actually started working at DARTDrones for a while, so that was great. We actually moved twice and moved the company while we were moving, because I was trying to figure out where I wanted to live long term. And I actually just had my first baby 3 months ago, and he goes to work with me.
For me, it's always, I get less rational the more stressed I get, which is how that is. So it's grounding myself. And so it's the fact that I could think bigger, and the people that are in there with me was always something that helped me a lot, because it's my family, people that are around you that maybe you forget sometimes, my staff, people that depend on me for a paycheck. And so when things are really bad, I would always connect with them. I actually brought my dog to the office, so it used to help me a lot. It's odd.
Things.
I mean, it is a seriously high-stress place to be, and we would do fun things in the office. That's the time where you say, right, we're all going to go to the movies and watch Star Wars or something, and then come back and then try and do this again. So these are the sort of sanity moments that you have to find, and for me, that's what worked.
So mine came from, this is certainly not advice, do not take this, and I would not follow this, but mine came from, I got in too deep too quickly, and personally had too much money at risk. And so I remember driving back from I thought I was gonna get money on Shark Tank. I did not, as you pointed out, so thank you. But I really did, I needed a deal. Like, I was broke. I mean, I had put my personal money in, the money from, like, everything was in. And I'd like to say that I was motivated as like this great entrepreneur, but I was actually motivated for the not wanting to die, because stopping would have been death. And so the only way I could survive was to keep going, and so that's actually what drove me. But it wasn't, I didn't feel good inside. I mean, on the outside, I think I kept the sort of rah-rah, but inside it was just like, if I stop, we're dead. Like, I already put too much money in, so closing the company will just bankrupt me. So I might as well at least still try. Yeah. And that was, don't do that.
I did that. Don't do
See,
it.
if you had been there,
No, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of really interesting advice, especially since there's a lot of students in this room, and as they probably deal with difficulties and challenges in their businesses, that advice could really be helpful as they kind of look at how do they come back up from that and things like that. So thank you all. The next topic I want to hit on is obviously you've all pitched on Shark Tank, and I'm guessing to many more investors outside of that. What I want to hit upon, like, what is your advice to entrepreneurs that are actually raising money, and how do you recommend they start to even approach that?
Yeah, raising money is awful, to be honest. Let's just be honest about it. It's a bunch of egos at play, and at the end of the day, it's this fear of missing out. So if you really do have investors that are interested in investing, and it's the truth, and you don't get overexcited, and you really procure the time and get it to close, it's a really nice kind of effect, because then the dominoes kind of start falling and other investors start coming in. So that's kind of what just happened to us. We just finished raising our seed round. And for us, it was just all about getting that one fish to bite. And for us, it was a pretty big fish. So after that, a bunch of these tiny other fishes kind of came in, and we kind of closed out pretty quick. But in reality, raising money is a major pain in the ass, and it's not fun. And it's definitely, there's no set of guidelines or rules that are ever going to be right for raising money.
Just to jump in here, David actually just closed $1 million seed round, so let's give him a round of applause.
Yeah, I mean, I have, over the years, I just have lots of ideas, and I've been having all these different ideas for businesses. And one of the things I didn't quite realize when I was a student, like before I owned DARTDrones, was that it does, like, a business plan is sort of like, it's okay, you could write one. But like, if you think through a business plan in your mind, like, I eliminate so many ideas because I'm like, how am I going to find a customer for this? Or how would I segment the market this way? And to me, I think like before you raise money, you have to really know your marketing and sales. Like, I've noticed in a lot of business plans, like marketing and sales, it's like, oh, we're going to post on social media and get a public relations influencer. But really, like, that's the hardest part of business. Once you get the whole thing set up, actually finding your first 100 customers, your second 100 customers, then we need 1,000 customers, then 10,000. That is the hardest part, and that's all I've been doing for the last like 4 years of DARTDrones. And I think a lot of times people miss that part, and they think that like the customers are going to come running to them because they have a great product. But you have to try so many different things to make it work. So to me, like now, like looking from a different perspective, if I was trying to invest in something, that's all I would ask about was like how they're going to find these customers and market to them and actually have a sales team to sell to them. Because that's been really, really eye-opening to me as just an entrepreneur.
Oh, well done. So I'll probably build on that. I think personal credibility when you make a pitch is everything, and that's going to come from the kind of things you say. If you say we're going to just go online and make a ton of money, it's just people that you're pitching to have seen a lot of this, and so I feel like you have to not drink your own Kool-Aid and show that you actually have some emotional intelligence to actually understand the pitfalls and things like that, so you're credible. So I think that's it, and obviously know your stuff, have your numbers down, understand what you're selling, get your story right, all those kinds of things. But I think one of the things that I probably didn't do that I should have done is got advice and help earlier. There is, even though it's not a magic bullet because everyone clicks on attaches to different hooks, like you said, the more decks you see, the more familiar you get with, how to do it well. And some of these ideas are learned as opposed to instinctive. So as entrepreneurs, we're instinctive, but actually pitching, there's a process there too. So, see all of it, get help, have someone else read it, someone that's not in your space, because probably the people you're pitching to, and that's another thing, don't know your business the way you do. So I think that's really important. And I think, again, just always be credible, be humble, be ready for the questions. I mean, people are going to ask you the questions that hurt you. And that's the ones we never ask ourselves and put in the deck. So,
yeah, I mean, I think all of that is great. And then I'd say the follow-on to that is it's a marriage. And so you want to pick the right partner. And so that can be really hard when you're desperate because you're really, like, if you need money, it's hard to say, like, I'm gonna pick the right partner. But it's probably maybe the hardest thing of entrepreneurship is to stay the course and to get those right partners, because trust me, your business will go through terrible times. And if you have investors that are just aligned to make money, they're not going to back that business in the same way if they're aligned that the success of that business is tied to them personally in terms of what they believe it should do. And so really having like a mission and making sure they believe in what the business is supposed to really accomplish is so important when you go through those tough times, because in those they'll come and help you more and get you out of them.
Well, the important thing to note to that too, to what Jamie just said, is every single person, every single investor, especially the ones that are the more successful ones, are all going to have a different opinion on what you need to do. And so when you're pitching, one investor or one group is going to tell you, oh, you should focus more on this sales strategy. And then the other group that you pitch the next day is going to tell you that you're an idiot for even thinking of doing that strategy. So it happens all the time, and you just really need to kind of hone in and run your business the way that you know how to run your own business.
And it happens on Shark Tank, right? I mean, the personalities that are on display there. I mean, I don't want to work with Kevin, So I mean,
Kevin's a nice guy.
So I mean, so you think about it like that, and so yeah, there you go. So we've all got different personalities and fits, and it's it's not the wedding, it's the marriage, right? So my dad always tells me,
Yeah.
sound advice is marry in haste, repent at leisure, So it's like you kind of, you do this stuff. I mean, I'm not married, so, but it's important. So these are the people that you're gonna work with through the hard times. It's great to get their money, but there's expectations that come with that, like marriage, and all these things that come together. And is this the person that's going to be there with you in dark days? Because I've met a lot of people that struggle because of that. They took the money in because it's great, and then they're in a crisis, and that person's not there with them. And then that's a big problem. Not all money is equal. I feel like that. So.
And just to build on a couple points you guys made, is there any advice that you have for choosing the right investor? Because I know you guys mentioned a little bit about that.
It all depends on how desperate you are. Jamie said.
I mean, I think that is the sad truth. I think the if you could, you would choose the investor. And again, like if this is why having a mission as a company is so great, because it's more than just the product or some sales strategy or something else, but it's the overall encompassing thing. And so if you can get someone to buy into, our mission was to reduce crime in neighborhoods. If I can get an investor that's like, I want to reduce crime in neighborhoods also, like I love that, and we did. And I'm going to back that, then in bad times, they're like, I'll put more money in to get that to happen. Because it's so easy for them to write it off. Like, it's easy for an investor to take, they have a fund, they have multiple companies going. They can just write it off and put more time on the next one. And so if you have that luxury to do that, or even that, we got lucky. I mean, I did try to do it, but at the end, I would have probably taken money from people that weren't as aligned, and got lucky that we took money from people that were aligned. So.
And then just to build on that again, Jamie, you're the only person that's ever pitched and then brought back actually as a judge. Do you have what was that experience like, and what do you specifically look for in entrepreneurs now that you're on the other side of the table?
So I try to be humble, and I try not to celebrate things. Like when we sold the company, I told internally to the team, it's like a marathon. This is a water stop. We're going to keep running the company, so let's focus on tomorrow. So I try to do those things. When I went back on Shark Tank as the only person ever to be an entrepreneur on there and then to be a shark, it was hard to be humble. I was pretty, I was pretty friggin' proud of myself, to be honest. That was, thank you. It was, setting, this is where goal setting is tough, because if I'd ever set a goal, my goal would have been to be on Shark Tank. And I ended up achieving so much more. And it's why I think you should always try to do goals that are things that are much broader and don't have a ceiling on them. Because in some ways, achieving a goal can be a bad thing, because it'll stop you from actually getting to the potential that you could get to. And again, if I had set the goal that I'm going to go on Shark Tank and be so successful they're going to invite me back, I'd be an idiot. And so, but that's what happened by focusing on making neighborhoods safer, which is an unachievable goal.
And we've got a couple minutes left, so I want to do like a lightning round kind of. And so my first thing is who is your favorite judge on Shark Tank and why? And Jamie, you can't say yourself.
Mine's still Mark Cuban.
Yeah, Mark Cuban.
Yeah, Mark Cuban. He actually, I'll say why if you don't mind, just because I thought that he had no preconceived notions, and he was open to receiving and listening and analyzing. I wasn't sure what to expect with him, but I thought he was really smart, very personable, and was fair. That's why I liked him.
So Kevin O'Leary, by far, who is Mr. Wonderful, who's probably the most hated judge on the show. So the reason why is because when you are on Shark Tank, if you're not going to air, it's usually because you didn't get enough back and forth with the sharks on the negotiation. And so a lot of the deals that he does, he knows probably that the entrepreneurs are not going to take, but it creates that back and forth that's going to get them on the air. And so he's, in some ways, probably the most friendly to entrepreneur person on the show, even though he doesn't look like it. And personally, he's one of the best guys I've met in a long time, and he's a really nice person. So he needs that, because it doesn't look like that on the show.
And then the classic panel ending question: if you had to leave the audience in the room with one piece of advice, what would that be?
I'm going to think on this one.
Yeah, I think my piece of advice is to really, I always wanted to be a serial entrepreneur and start tons of different businesses. And I'm like, oh, I could do drones and I'll do that for 2 years and then I'll do something else for 2 years. And like, that was my plan. But now I realize like I'm in this for 10 years. So, and I am not our target customer. So it's really hard for me to sell things because I'm not, like a lot of our clients are enterprise businesses trying to get into drones, or like the aviation guy at the FBI. Like, I don't know what his life is like, so it's hard for me to sell to him. So for me, I would say, everyone always says find something that you're passionate about, but also find something that you're the target customer, because it would be so much easier if you could understand like what you would want, versus trying to figure out like how to get into the mind of like who your target customer is. So definitely where your passion is, but also like something that you're excited to work on for 10 plus years.
Well, my business didn't work out, so a lot of learning, and very much so on the personal level for me. So I think one of the, if you distill it down, is to always be honest with yourself. I think that's the loneliest place there is, to know who you are, where you're strong, where you're not to get carried away in your own hype, all those kinds of things, because that's the stuff that gets in the way of making good decisions. And so forget the MBA stuff. I feel like this stuff is kind of make or break, was for me anyway.
So I actually say advice is, I think, one of the worst things ever invented in the world, both to give and to take. You should never give it and you should never take it. What you should do is learn and listen to everything that's happening around you as data points. Because the problem with advice is it's coming from a different perspective. My perspective, the things that I've gone through in my life, are different than yours. And so if you listen to what I tell you to do, it's going to be different because your life is different than mine. And so listen to the things that I've done and how they've turned out. Take that data in and then make your own decision on what you should do. So that's not advice.
David, anything to add?
Honestly, after that, I can't add anything.
Thank you, guys.